Okay, nimbola binaka binaka bakalevo na siama tikumai na kay binaka ni ko sampai kiro siama talaningo na turang marama biokani Dr. Sivendra Michael wat kingong Dr. T may Hawaii. Nangonong ko siya masarti ko may Thailand marot kini bulong-bulong binakati ko madasawat siya macam may nambara itu to may nukolofa. Yang ko satu sarto ko may Bangkok may Thailand Iyan na roma teman ko na non Talanoa na bika na may waseti ko weekend andola kana non marot takati ko na non may biwaseti ko na ibata-batang ko. Bata-bata ni biba kaunggeti bira na ngone kenda talangan tumbu-tumbu bira na lubenda era bina kata tiko sona dingin-dingin sona taka-taka ni baka dindike na beka baka sainisi sana beka baka bulu-bulu tikenta sana nraki bisau gosaranga na ulutang na bingara tikino Dr. Sivendra Michael. Enda la ronga na sere ngon mitik butak na nonda bitala na signi ko na sere na wanua do mo na mga ni siya mo chumikina sangol chuka na ba kumbula bikem ni kersara. Senang dia nasir totok nasir gona bonon moni bako sibika na nasir matikan gona bese bura-bura don boleh binakan nasir matikan may Perth toka sa Sainronro, dombula binaka, bakumbula tarchungan gobe Oni Mata, kay Monica Kuroy. Dombula binaka na siya mati kumain na kabinang ni kuwa, nanonda vital noti ko bat kinanonda bulan to kay siya masartik go, may nabuno pa katurang o Thailand. Boleh binakaria tarako-rako, naturangan ko Dr. Sivendra Michael na madao rosawa ti siya mo chuko may tonga matini singay. Ya ni kuwa sa siya mo sar chuko ko mena puno bagay siya. Meta na baka bula sar matawa sawadi ka Dr. Michael. Baka bula matamay. Can you just unmute Dr. Michael?
Swadika, Malo and Bulavinaka, colleagues in Malay. Calling in from Thailand. Local time here is 3:23 p.m. on the 27th of Feb. 5 hours behind Fiji, I think. The weather is extremely hot, and just blessed to be here and blessed to be gifted with the breath of life.
Sabi na how long did it take you to fly from Tonga to Thailand?
I came via Fiji, so I did Tonga to Fiji, which is like 1 hour and 20 minutes, and then spent the night, actually rushed home to see my daughter, because I have to see her before I make one of these big trips. You would have seen my story. Sometimes she always asks me all these questions like, why do you have to go? Why do you have to go that far? And then from Nandi to Sydney, and then Sydney to Thailand was like about 9 hours. So plus 5, 14 hours, 15 hours, 20 minutes. Yeah.
And which airline did you fly with? Of
course, Fiji Airways all the way till Sydney, and then Thai Airways from Sydney to Bangkok.
Sandin. And how long will you be in Thailand? And what is your next destination?
Actually, I'm just transiting in Thailand. Usually I go one go, but there's because when you travel to East Africa, the flights are at odd hours, like maybe early in the morning tomorrow or early in the afternoon, depending on the route. So my point of destination is Malawi. I will be in Malawi for the next 3 to 4 weeks, doing some work there, coming back at towards the end of March. I can briefly describe what I do, as many of you would have heard in the last 2 discussions we've had. So just supporting the government of Malawi with its efforts to develop the next phase of a resilience building project, disaster resilience in specific. And so I leave from here tonight at 1:35 a.m. So maybe like 8 hours from now, to Ethiopia, my last duty station. My last before Tonga, that was my last deployment to Ethiopia. And then from Ethiopia to Malawi, Lingwangwe.
Sandina. And how long were you in Ethiopia for before you moved to Tonga?
So I was in Ethiopia while doing my PhD in 2018 through British Council in New Zealand to support the Social Enterprise World Forum, which is the largest enterprise world forum for micro entrepreneurs that are, or any form of entrepreneurship that is contributing to a social good and an economic good. So mostly like green initiatives, initiatives like, like Save a Tree, making chocolates out of like the disposable cocos, the Amazon Save the Amazon Forest Initiative. So these are an opportunity for all forms of entrepreneurship that's supporting green or greener development to come together and exchange ideas. So it's a 5-day symposium, but of course, to design such an initiative, it takes a couple of months. So we get sent quite in early. And the only reason we went was because Social Enterprise World Forum in 2017 was hosted by none other than New Zealand. So New Zealand held it in 2017. And then it was an opportunity for Africa to host, and Ethiopia bid it, and Ethiopia won the bid to host the Social Enterprise World Forum. And as a employee of British Council New Zealand, and British Council being the the Queen's money, the late Queen, Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II, her funds through the trust fund and the initiatives that she pledged towards in making this world a better place were kind of diverted towards organizations like British Council New Zealand, and so we were a large player in organizing the Social Enterprise World Forum. Of course, it's led by the country, the government, and we're based in the government built places as well. So these modalities kind of same with the UN, where you get deployed for a short period. But of course, with the British Council, we are a larger team that gets deployed as opposed to United Nations programs, depending on the agency you work for. Yeah.
Did you predict when you were studying and doing your PhD? Did you kind of have some of kind of thinking that one day you'll be traveling the world with your work? It sounds exciting, Dr. Sivendra.
Never. I would say I never predicted it. I actually, like I told you, I stepped first time for me to step on a plane was at the age of 19. Although from the beautiful garden island of Fiji, Taveuni, we have a very natural tendency to take the boat. and deal with the monopoly that exists in the Fijian shipping market. But it was what it was, or how we can say in economics, the oligopoly, where we only have two competitors like trying to breathe down each other's necks, but we are at the receiving end, at the customers, the people of the Vanua that have to take those journeys across if you want to come to Suva or if you want to go back home. Yeah. So yeah, 18 hours by boat was life till I guess 19, and a scholarship opportunity opened up in the United States. I traveled a lot in the States, more than some of the Americans, I guess, because it was so cheap to travel. I didn't see any reason why people would not want to get on a plane and go somewhere. And that kind of exposed me to the world I wanted to be part of, which is the development world. Yeah.
Wow, well done. Binakabakaliw. Dr. Sivendra, bikim ni nabarong ti kumay, ranyo ni saraba na ni Robitala no ko sa katulu ni Robitala no, na uto ti ni Robitala na mada ko tumay na bulo match. Na ikaw ni siya na bati ko na ni Robitala no, nanggaluray na no sana lecho ko Malawi, kaya kaya ngalala ni turang ososo ko, kaya total nangon may update may Malawi, no nataka mikan nanto makasara gona ni Rubita nataka chunga so na ulutang ni no nataka ni tamban ni biba katoro de kataki wako sibinan rakibisau kena bika daro ni takabra itu ke ni Pasifika o kenda in the tiko na Pasifika ndo na ulutang saranga ibina katoko mikrobital notaka nando monta our voices, how can we make our Pacific voices be heard within our circles in Oceania itself, for us to have our voices heard by our own people for our people. Me libnangon do warong dir me na bulay ngrala kumay na buno range kumikino Dr. Sivendra ni ka ko so na wali non talenga na membaleta na bin kanan da kimisa chuk saranga bi kedang. So we already have the solutions to some of these big climate change questions. So now I'll pose the question to you then, Dr. Sivendra, in terms of looking at our authentic Oceania voices or Pacific voices. What is one of the issues that you face in your line of work when it comes to organizations or communities being heard for the knowledge that they have?
Okay, I will thank you, Dr. T, for that very powerful question, I must say. I would like to take a step back first and just acknowledge that, in the in the times and spaces that I have done these deployments, say for example in Tonga and in Ethiopia and in Jordan, although no matter how small the months of time was, um, within these places that I've actually had the opportunity, and God, through God's blessing, acknowledging that as well, that had made these opportunities possible and has opened these doors for me. Through His blessings, I must acknowledge that, you know, the voices of or the stories of people in these places were so much more aligned to the kinds of work that we do in these spaces. However, when you enter these spaces, you are always going to be entering as a foreigner to their soil, and you must acknowledge that that their stories are their stories to be told. It's not your story to be, you know, kind of overstepping your boundary and like imposing your story over theirs, making it more important than others. Each country, each region has their own way of coming into this space. Each region has their own fight when it comes to climate change. And for us in the Pacific, our stories, I must acknowledge, resonate with a lot of people. People in Africa, people of the global South. We call it global South for a reason, because the global South is actually at the frontline truths of climate change. So most of our brothers and sisters and countries in the global South are those that are kind of facing it, which includes a large part of Asia, right? So I guess just to go back to your question now, like what are some of the challenges that I face, is one, I'm not sure if I've mentioned this before, but many a times when I was writing my PhD, I could almost question myself whether I was telling the legitimate story, because so much has been written by those that are not Pacific Islanders. And I'm sorry to say this, those that are listening, but we have a lot of foreign researchers coming to do the research for us and tell our stories for us. So the authenticity in telling your story is sometimes even questioned by yourself. Like, how am I telling these stories? Am I telling them in the right way? So the challenge is not the letting the foreigners come and tell the story. The challenge is how they are telling your story and whether that is a correct description of of our narratives, and whether the and how those stories have been told in what places, how that shape the public discourse, and how that shape the, you know, the debate in the amongst wider audiences. It's very, very critical. um and so I get a lot of discomfort knowing that that our own Pacific people who are telling these stories are not acknowledged. One, second, there are parts and partials of stories that are told and misinterpreted by those that are not from the Pacific. And there is no form of validity or verification that's done to get these voices or these narratives into public discourse. The third discomfort that I have faced, which I wrote in my PhD, if you read the first section of my PhD, why I wrote this thesis, I told the story of how I was amongst a large group of expatriates that was writing or developing a piece of policy or strategic framework for the region, for the Pacific region, of which only a third of them were Pacific Islanders. And the kinds of targets and initiatives, because every strategy, colleagues, a policy has a monitoring and evaluation framework. A policy can also have a guidance implementation plan. So when we are doing a policy, you are doing a development challenge, you are doing the theory of change that you envisage to see. Now, these are like very philosophical, theoretical kinds of language that I'm talking about. But in essence, all it's saying is that if we do X and assume that we do, so for example, if we want communities in Fiji to be more resilient, we assume that one, the political leaders would support the changes in legislation and policy in the ground. Two, that the communities would actively engage. So these are assumptions. There are big assumptions we draw upon. And that would eventually be driven by output 1 and output 2. And the activities under this output are A, B, and C. So from the bottom, you look at the activities that contribute to the bigger output, then you draw some assumptions that will contribute to this change. I'm just giving you a framing, right? How things are done in the policy space. Now, if you are someone like me as a young 22-year-old, 23-year-old in that space, the first question that you will ask yourself is, who validates that these activities are actually required by our people? One, how do you know that the communities in Fiji will become resilient if we do X, Y, and Z? Or partially resilient? Or will it contribute to their resilience? What if these activities don't contribute to the resilience? What if the community is unaware of these activities? How were these activities shaped? As a young boy who has actually grown up in a flood-prone area, where we stage 5, where we have floods, people treat it normally, people know how to respond to it. What is the legitimacy to have a knowledge awareness session? What grounds are we having this awareness workshop? Or what is the framing of the workshop that we are trying to have? Question 2, if you are building a, say for example, evacuation center for this community, does the community actually need the evacuation center now? Or does the community have other priorities, like make the roads better, right? Build footbridges, renovate the schools, because those schools can be evacuation centers. So the framing and the shaping and the designing of these activities was something that put off this 23-year-old when he was part of his first few employment. And I asked the question to myself, but I'm sorry, and colleagues that are on the call, that I disappointed my Vanua. I disappointed my people because I didn't have the legitimacy, or wrong word. I didn't have the courage. I didn't have, how do I say this? In maybe what we say is, I didn't have the drive in me to ask these foreigners, on what basis are you making this, or telling us that this is supposed to be, this is going to work for my people or for my community? Of course, I assume my role as an associate, and as an associate, I'm the one that's going to carry the papers, print the notes, write the meeting minutes, hold the discussions and type out the discussion notes. My job is not to contribute to the discussion. So assuming that, zipping my mouth and taking the back seat was what I did, which now I pinch myself and say, I should have spoken up. But what it did instead was it shaped me to ask myself, how can I be in that position to start writing for my people? Like, why we don't have to get I have a lot of Australian, New Zealand, and American friends. So this does not imply to anyone, but just putting it out there that we don't have to get someone from another side of the world to come and develop this for us, no matter how much of an expert you are, right? It's the same thing I'm asking myself when I'm going to Malawi, is if I'm going to do this and I keep telling them during the meeting, you are the experts. I'm just there to help put it together. The communities are the experts. The communities know what they want. We need to have workshops with the communities. Based on what the communities tell us, they can tell us. Then that can help me inform the way I develop this proposal. I will not take cue from anyone else but the people that actually require this work, right? So sorry for speaking a bit long, but I guess this is a challenge for us. Like, how can we ensure that community voices are reflected in these spaces? Consultants can come back to us any day and say, this is not only about your community, Michael. This is a collective group of 300 communities, and these activities are designed to benefit all 300 communities that we that are our target population. So the individualization of a problem, or the unpacking of one minor problem that your community needs specifically, may not hold true for other 299 communities. What we are trying to put forward in this design strategy is something to benefit a whole population, not a sample population. So they can come back and say that to me. And that's one of the reasons why we don't speak, because we are coming from a place where we only have knowledge about our Vanua and our Tikina and our Toka Toka, right? We don't have so much knowledge about how it is linked to other provinces and so forth. But what we can ask them to do is do some form of analysis and match if these are community needs that are linked across the spectrum, not only to particular communities. And on the other side, communities need to tell those stories and identify those needs through their own planning processes, through their own village council meetings, through their own Tikina council meetings, through their own provincial council meetings, in order for this to reach the national and subnational level ears and people like us that are sitting in offices with very, very limited knowledge of what's actually happening in the communities, until we remove ourselves from the office and we take ourselves to the communities.
Sivendra, for openly sharing your thoughts about that, Dr. Sivendra. And you mentioned about many of these consultants that come in. One of the questions I would like to ask is the question on translation, because I know many of them may speak the English language, and many of our people are more familiar with the indigenous languages or dialects. How do you navigate these spaces, Dr. Sivendra, in making sure that the stories or information that our local people share are taken seriously, or authentically recorded in reports and papers?
I think quite genuinely, the answer is take the back seat. So as consultants, as foreigners to the land that is not ours, spaces that is not ours, we need to take the back seat. Even if you are a national staff, you're not from that place, it's always good to go with the consultant, but also remember that you need to also take a back seat. How we have actually navigated through these spaces, we've identified community leaders. So for example, in Fiji, we go through the district offices and we go through the Turangani Koro and the Turangani Matangali, Turangani Koro. So like, for example, in the research that I did in Vanua Vatua, there is 3 Turangani Yavusas, and there is the Turangani Koros within the communities. So we ask them to help us. And so, of course, first of all, the first barrier is me translating to them what we want to do. So that I ask one of the university students in the village to go and translate for me on what I'm doing to the Turangani Koro or the Turangani Yavusa. And then, of course, the Turangani Yavusa introduces me and what we do. And then he holds the space. He holds the space. He translates the discussion. You have a local interpreter with you and a local national consultant that documents. And you only speak when you are asked to speak in these spaces, because sometimes the Talanoa is more genuine when it's amongst the people, by the people, for themselves, right? You take the backseat. Before I joined this other program, I was part of this project called Governance for Resilient Development in the Pacific. And it's one of the most unique projects that I've ever been part of. And so they do a lot of, demonstration projects. So basically, for example, let me think of a community we worked in. Okay, so for example, in Sese, so in Sese, was it Sese? Yeah, Sese, we did a water project, and it's a community where we wanted to do a water tank and so forth. Now, the identification of the project itself was not driven by us as the donor or as a development partner, right? It was driven by the Vosani, is it the Vosani Tikina or the Vosani? There's the meeting at the community level, eh?
That's the maternity killer.
The
Mate,
another one.
is it? Oh, that's a representative.
Yeah, it goes higher. Like I think it's
Oh.
the Vosani. Like so, for example, if it's in Nandronga province, it goes from that the prioritization process for the project. So the Turangani Koro is in its capacity will submit the papers to the provincial council office, and then they will go and attend the meeting to help prioritize the projects. So it's not us, it's them identifying their needs. And so when it comes to that meeting, the Mbosini Vanua, and then they prioritize the projects, and then that one goes to the district, and the district council officer then takes it to the provincial officer, and the provincial officer then takes it to the commissioner's office, then submits it to the ministry. So there is this whole process of prioritization, and it depends because everybody has to know that Sese does have water problem, Sese does need a water tank, and so forth. And so when the consultations are held, even the Turangani Koro holds that space, the district officer is there to observe. The DO, we call them the DOs, right, in Fiji context. So they will come there and they will observe. And Mr. Sokotima from the Ministry of Rural Maritime Development and Disaster Management, he explains this the most authentic way ever. But I have gone with him to some of the community consultations. So they will consult, they will even do their own risk map. They will identify their own risks of doing this project, risk to the project, risks from the project, and then they will, cost all the things that needed. What are the resources they can provide as a community? What are the resources they require from the external partners? And then it goes through this process and it reaches the ministry, and then the ministry determines whether they have budget or they ask a agency like UNDP or a project like ours, and then it goes down. Of course, because we give money, we have to monitor. We have to go back and see those projects, how it's implemented, because it's not our money. It's the people of different countries. Their money comes to UNDP, right? So if it's a UK funding, it's the people of UK. It's their money. If it's a MFED funding, it's the people of New Zealand. So we have to be accountable. So even when we do monitoring and evaluation, we go and we take the back seat. I say this: we take the back seat. We take the back seat of the bus. We listen. We probe questions through the village council office, or we ask the DOs to ask the question on our behalf, who will actually interpret it in his own way and contextualize the question in the best way where he can get a Talanoa going, not just ask. Yeah. So yeah, that's the methodology that we have been using. I, in my PhD, call it Talanoa research conversations. People can and yesterday Save from US, I probably would have heard of Save. Is a very famous person in Twitter, and he also worked in PIFS as an intern. He talked about the legitimacy of or the authenticity of using Talanoa and why it is so practical for us to generate this conversation. So I think my answer to your question is take the back seat. Another relevant example that I can share in Tonga. Currently, Tonga is developing their national disaster risk management policy. So we, UNDP, we are working very closely with World Bank to help the government of Tonga, particularly the National Emergency Management Office, that is the drivers of this policy, that are shaping this policy. Now, the first draft of the policy was developed at the national level through national consultation. Now the draft is taken to the community. And I only wish Madam Moana Kioa, who is the Deputy Director of NEMO, joined me in this call. Because when she told me that we are going now to take the policy to the 4 island provinces to do consultations, the first thing I told her is, ma'am, I can't go. Why? You are the technical person. I said, no, this is the policy. that should be driven by the agency and should be for the people, by the people. So you must consult the people on whether this policy is going to hold, whether it's reflective of their needs, whether the priority policy actions that is identified is aligned to what they are doing in community development planning, whether the principles of this policy are something that they hold dear to themselves. It should not be shaped by us, right? Our job is to put it together, help them put it together, not to write it for them. It's to get those framings through the people and get their voices there. Malo.
Dr. Sivendra, but the bingo and was the use of the right language so that because I know that that report will end up in on the table of a person who makes decision for grants and funding to be sent over to the Pacific. For your honest responses, and as you said, most of the time you always have that backseat kind of way of thinking that maybe your voice is not valid because there are other people from outside the region that are there. Other people may be looking up to them compared to us who have a lived experience, which I think is really important, where there's a shift of that going on. We're not level for acknowledging the voices of the people, the indigenous knowledges, and even the knowledge in general that our people know. For example, the knowledge of flooding, the knowledge of the Nglamba, cyclone. Now, I know, Dr. Michael, you've attended a few COP meetings. You went to the one recently in Egypt. Where else did you attend this meeting? And what is this meeting? What does COP mean?
So COP is a UNFCCC meeting. So it's the UN for climate change. And COP is in long term is a conference of parties. So last year was the 27th COP, which means 27 years now our leaders have been meeting. Every year is a COP. And it's going from region to region depending on capacity. Small island developing states, sorry, I repeat myself, small island developing states or SIDS. First and only COP was hosted by Fiji, which was called COP23, which was in Bonn. We couldn't have held it in Fiji because COP brings together almost 20 to 30,000 people from around the world. I repeat, around 20 to 30,000 people, activists, CSOs, development partners, negotiators, government focal points, you name it. They are all in that space for a period of 2 weeks to kind of agree to disagree on the initiatives that are designed globally, and how do we bring together our initiatives, align it to our national priorities, and also kind of it's been a journey. So COP, if you even before I was born, no, actually I was born when COP happened. So 1991 was the Kyoto Protocol, and then I think that was when the first discussion on loss and damage started. So 2015 was the first COP I attended, which was in Paris. And so if Dr. Charles Samuai is listening to this call, he would acknowledge that I was the, what you call, I don't know how to, the puppy in this space, because I was following him everywhere. He goes somewhere, I go with him because I do not know where to go. So yeah, it's a monster of its own. Like, it's a huge meeting. So you have, like, at the conference of parties, you have the negotiations that's going on, and then you have the side event that's going on, then you have the protest that's happening outside, then you have the demonstration of, like, young activists in this space, which if you are a negotiator, you will try to go and attend because you're fighting for the same thing, but you can't because of the kinds of badge you are wearing. There are universities from all over the world that are there to talk about how they are contributing to the change. Yeah, so it's just a very big meeting on climate change, but it's very important. It's so important for us in the Pacific. it is so important for governments, because it is at this meeting where countries that have ratified international treaties like the Paris Agreement, they are held accountable to how they are reporting and what they are doing to achieve the targets or the outcomes stipulated in each of the articles of this agreement. Sorry for my legal jargons. So basically, when countries agree, say for example, to eliminating all forms of domestic violence or eliminating all forms of violence against women, which is the CEDAW, so Convention on the Elimination of Violence Against Women, when countries ratify, they have to demonstrate how they are doing that. They have certain requirements that they need to do. So same for climate change, we had the Kyoto Protocol, and then after the Kyoto Protocol, we had the Paris Agreement, right? So we have a series of treaties that come into place that we are signatories to. I think Fiji was one of the first countries, if I'm correct, the first country to sign the Paris Agreement. So as a small island developing state and a small island, large ocean island state, I would like to say, we were proudly one of the very first small islands or large ocean states to sign onto this treaty. And we are amongst many other countries in the world, one of the pioneers in this space, because we quite frankly talk about how we have actually been meeting our climate ambition. Note to self, colleagues on the call, that the Pacific by large is a negligible contributor to these carbon emissions and the climate change issue, right? Carbon emissions, we are negligible. We are very small, 0.04% of the total contributions to the greenhouse gas emissions. So insignificant player as opposed to large developed states. So our job in those spaces is to make sure that the large developed nations that are actually emitting more than us are doing something to be held responsible, to be held accountable, and to be doing what they're supposed to do and be responsible, like carbon responsible. In the climate adaptation space, because of their emissions, we are getting affected. How do they compensate us for the loss and damage that we are incurring? What is the mechanism around that, right? I'm just talking to you in layman terms, because if I go into the necessities of what COP is, it gets a little bit technical. So just in a very simple nutshell, it's a very, very critical meeting. We send very large delegations, and the Pacific is still underrepresented in this space. A figure from last year, total number of Pacific negotiators that are negotiating our future was less than the amount of fossil fuel lobbyists in the room at COP. So let me give you proportions, right? So there were more than 600 fossil fuel lobbyists that were at COP, and the total number of negotiators across all the Pacific was around 300 something. So we are still, we are a very small group of very passionate and outspoken and driven people that want to, or advocates, however you want to put it, that are trying to hold others to accountable, at the same time being pushed back by these lobbyists that are against the idea, that are not understanding what's happening in the Pacific. Yeah. And before we go into the next question, I think it's important that just to clarify what you said, Dr. T, like, sometimes taking the back seat, it's not about not speaking or not feeling comfortable or legitimacy of their story. It's about how do you make others known in the same space that they should try their best to observe the same principles, if I may. Yeah.
buto to kandil pinaka bali Dr. Sivendra Michael bikim din lay tumbu ni sema chukumini kuwa rong binakati na niro bitalo tiko ke Dr. Sivendra na no na kata tiko ko na tambani ni bueti ni rakbisau wasia chukona mado sao chiro ni rete na interview na no YouTube channel ke bakoni sembere nyo o baka lewe na bale fomu na no YouTube channel ro ni ngolikin sa chikin na nero video bat ke Dr. Sibian Rai bikim ni na bangara wuli ke na takataka na bunwe e bingara bitukino kwa Nak baka lebu Dr. Sibian Rai for sharing some of the challenges that you face in this space, but also looking at ways to overcome them. In order to make sure that the voices of our people are genuinely taken on board and not just maybe, as I say, like a rubber stamp, to say, okay, we've done X, Y, and Z, we've done consultation. But
yeah, that's the reality, Dr. T. Like, it's not only doing this work so passionately in your home and in your country, it's about ensuring that those stories and those I get emotional. It's about ensuring that the work that we are so passionate about and the impacts and stories of our people in our Vanua are heard in these international and regional spaces. I recall in 2015 that it was the Pacific leaders, the Vanuatu Pacific leader Kiribati, of course Fiji was there, and the Pacific leaders that stand in solidarity outside the negotiation rooms and lobbied so hard for loss and damage to be included as an individual chapter in the Paris Agreement. If it wasn't for Honorable President of Kiribati, Mr. Andy, Honorable Andy, the Prime Minister of Vanuatu, the ministers, the Pacific ministers, the Nauru ambassador, that was standing outside. It was not us, it was our leaders that actually stood outside and spoke about what's happening back home and why we cannot have loss and damage be treated as a climate adaptation issue, or loss and damage be taken in as a part of adaptation. It has to be a standalone. It cannot be integrated into one article within the Paris Agreement. They have been fighting from 1991. From 1991, they have been fighting for loss and damage fund. They have been fighting, and it only got endorsed last year. Last year, Honorable Prime Minister of Tuvalu, Minister Simon, Honorable Minister Simon, he had to stand in knee-length water in his Tupenu and tell the story of the drowning, sinking islands. You remember that? It takes our ministers to share emotions in this space, because it's not that those tears just come out because they are telling the stories. They have lived and felt and grown in that space, in that place they call home, that they identify as home, and they are standing there not only for himself as a political leader, but for his people. Right? Our population are relatively very small compared to what like Thailand is. Like, we are maybe one district in Thailand. It makes our total population. So we cannot compare our in population, but we can compare that if these impacts continue to grow, we will no longer have a place to call home. So quite genuinely, when you are talking about people stories, community narratives, we need the communities to step up and tell us these stories so that we can authentically take it to the spaces where we are engaging in, right? We can make references to their stories and say, the people of Vanua Vatua are constantly being flooded. Their livelihoods are being ripped away. They are forced to relocate. There was this woman who said this to me: we don't have these discussions in negotiation. What happens in the negotiation space will break you into pieces, will shatter your heart, that you are sitting in a room full of people that have no knowledge of what's happening in the Pacific, no knowledge what's happening to large ocean states, no knowledge on how our people are suffering. Our leaders are called into these spaces to make sure these stories are told, to tell these stories in a political affirmative way. And we are the ones that are behind the scenes negotiating and taking their advice and leading on, right? But not only their advice, the advice of our communities. Why do civil society organizations come to these spaces? Why does climate activists come to these spaces? They come to tell the stories of our people. There's nothing else, right? They want those stories to reach the room. They want the frontline truths to be referenced in the negotiation. You don't just come and tell me that we are going to do something and have this mechanism in place in the next 2 years to finalize the reporting mechanism for loss and damage. We don't want to hear that. We want you to know that our people are suffering, right? We are not contributing to the climate change issue. We are suffering. Our homes are taken away from us, right? Our land is taken away from us. We are relocating, which means we are adapting to a new lifestyle. This is not a story that many people know, so it needs to be told. So last year, I think I'm so grateful and I acknowledge the government of Fiji for giving me the opportunity to negotiate on climate adaptation. And I have never done it before in my previous capacities to go into the room and say those things, because most of the time I shadow someone else. They speak and then I help them develop the materials to say something, or alternatively I will draft and then we submit it to our what we call PCIDS chair, which is the Pacific Small Island Developing States chair, and then that goes into a larger group called IOSIS, Alliance on Small Island States. So IOSIS is our negotiating group, right? We will negotiate, they will negotiate on behalf of PCIDS. So IOSIS has 44 member states. 44 member countries will go into IOSIS and make a thing. And then IOSIS is part of G77 and China, which is 136 countries out of 197 or 195 that is representing at COP. So we have the majority. When G77 is in line with our stance, then we are a big group. Now, so that's how we negotiate. We negotiate through our channels. We don't just go and say something. But what we can do in those spaces, and which I have done last year, is to hold my flag up and tell the chair that we are wasting time to discuss what word to use, whether we use framework or whether we use a structured approach, or whether we agree on a timeline or whether we agree on a theme, because there is no time left for us to agree to this. And in the next 2 years, we will continue to decide on the language when the people back home don't have time. And they do not know that you are doing this in this room on their behalf. What they do need to know is that whether their stories are told in this room, yes or no, quite frankly. How we do that inside the space and outside the space, it depends on not only us as responsible citizens, but it also depends on you, the people of the Vanua, to tell those stories quite genuinely and channel those stories quite authentically to us. Whether it is through a research led by you, whether it's through a Talanoa conversation led by you, not led by us. You are the experts. It is your story. We are the carriers of your knowledge. We are the flask, or what you call you gift us your story, right? We take your story with us when we are in these spaces. You gift us with knowledge. We are the custodians. You are the custodian of the knowledge. We are the custodians and help of, not the custodians, we are like the ones that channel this knowledge. We are the channeler of this information, right? The knowledge broker, however you want to put it. So I think that's really really true. My Fiji government colleagues and most of my PCs focal points that are negotiators, they know of me and they know how I react. I'm very emotional and sensitive. A negotiator cannot be sensitive or emotional. They have to hold themselves together because it's not about letting it all out. So again, I'm not perfect. I'm learning. It takes time, especially when you're so attached to the people and you're so attached to these stories. So please forgive me. I'm learning in this space and I will continue to learn and try my best to hold myself together and authentically also share your story.
Dr. Sivendra. So remind us of the COP meetings you attended. So we'll start from the one last year. So that was held in Egypt.
Yeah,
And then
Egypt. And then I missed the Glasgow COVID, which was the COVID time because I had COVID. I was contracted with COVID. So 3 days before the flight, I was going through British Council and then I couldn't because they were doing active citizens training, which is a program that I helped develop in 10 Pacific Island countries. So they were doing that for the youth groups. So Glasgow I missed. I also missed Madrid. But then before that, I attended Poland, which was COP24, 23, which was Bonn, Germany, which was our COP, Fiji being the president in the largest delegation as well at that meeting because we were host there. And then COP21 Paris. I missed Marrakesh, which was 22. Yeah.
Wow.
And
So
then
the one
and also at every COP, there's different badges. So at COP21, I was a University of Auckland student. I held the badge of an observer. So I could only observe. I could go into the rooms where I'm allowed to go. Not all the rooms you are allowed to go. If there is space in the room, they will let you in, but you're not speaking. At COP23, I went in as a climate action zone badge holder. So I was in the protest and the, holding government to account. I'm sure Fiji government was not happy with the things that we did there, but nevertheless, it was a space that we were there. We were holding people to account. And then what? The second week, they gave us a party overflow badge. So I was able to go inside the room and see how the negotiations happened. Then COP24, I was a government of Fiji party badge holder. So it was my first COP to shadow at that time Director Vinil. Actually, no, it was Director Nilesh, who was the climate change head. So he made opportunity for 4 young people to join the negotiation team. So we went 4 of us. And in COP23, we took 17 young people, of which 2/3 first time to step on a plane all the way to Germany. Yeah. One of them is a very good friend, Abel Alangavesi. He's in Adelaide or Flinders University now doing a master's in disability policy. So hopefully he comes back and contributes to the region, particularly around climate change. So COP24 was Poland, and then last year was Egypt. Yeah. Yeah. And
so
many
yeah,
of my colleagues, I don't want to name, when they go to 4 or 5 COPs and they see that not enough things are moving, they're like, I'm done. I can't go to COP anymore. Or they would say it's just a pure waste of my time. But I think the conversation that I always have with them is, if not us, then who? Like, it's about making sure that if others are not going, that at least some of us are there to try and negotiate or try and push forward, because it's an institutional knowledge thing. Like if you go from one COP to another, you carry the knowledge from what's happening before and what's not happened, so you can hold others to account. Like, oh, we discussed that at COP23. Why hasn't anything been happened till today, right? So it's good. It requires a lot of reading, Dr. T. So don't forgive me. It takes we train for almost 6 months before we go to COP. Yeah.
Sanjin, so for those COP meetings like the one you attended last year in Egypt, were you invited by the Fiji government, or how did it work? for you to
So
be the representative?
So it's these two ways. You can get invited if you are a technical expert, or you can approach them and ask if you can be part of the delegation, and then they will allocate a task to you. But because I was I went through the negotiators program, the climate negotiators program, it made it easier for them to select me, because I had gone through the training, the UNFCCC training on how to negotiate, what to do in these spaces, and so forth. So when I approached Director Kushal, I asked if I could join, and I had funding secured as well. So they make available. Yeah, some of them are funded through the government, but these are mostly government of Fiji staff. It's hardly external private sector and so forth. Always every government takes youth delegates, always. So if youths, you are listening out there, join initiatives and programs that try and train you towards COP, and actually look for a nomination to be nominated to try and attend COP. I remember my first experience was following people, but hey, it's all about learning. So you will learn as well, just like I did.
Dr. Sivendra for the courage
Yeah.
to be in those spaces. So you're highlighting that there are some difficulties that you face, but then you are, inviting people with open arms, if they can be able to share their story, and this can be recorded officially into documentations and report. But interesting about, I was watching your updates from Egypt. How do they decide the next host? Who will be in charge of the next COP?
Oh, it's the chair. It's a whole different process. It's like the ministerial level. They are the CAP or CAP. It's one of the two. They actually negotiate, and then they, like, Australia is going to be the host of COP 20. This is year 2023, 2024. I think 2025. So this year is Dubai. Then I think next year is another region, and then so it's like pre-agreed, just like FIFA, where the FIFA goes. So it's like they have a similar, in simple, they have a similar thing. They bid, and then the parties vote for them. Yeah, and if you remember, last year Vanuatu told Australia that if you do not get yourself aligned to the Pacific priorities and what the Pacific want, then we will go and tell all the parties to not vote for Australia having the COP. Even these things can happen. So it's quite political, and we shouldn't take it as a joke. So so Australia needed to tie up their loose ends, and I don't know if they fully did, but they somewhat did, in my opinion, my personal opinion.
Because it seems like you're very passionate about it, and when you mentioned about law, it's kind of like an area, I'm sure, of work that you enjoy the most. And it's really wonderful that there are people like you who genuinely think of our knowledge holders, or those who work in the community. Because when you are there in international meetings, you're representing us, you're representing the how do I say, the NGOs, and the smaller organizations that are there. So binaka for doing what you do.
And also associating yourself with, like, civil society organizations, and affiliating yourself with the work that they do, like by not not going there to talk with them, but being at their events, like showing solidarity. Like if there is a Pacific Climate Warrior event, although I'm a Fiji government negotiator, right? It's only best that I ground myself. I use the word purposively. It's only best that we ground ourselves with the frontline truths and the realities that are being discussed in these side events. And it gives you a new kind of passion and energy, positive energy, that you are doing what you are doing for a purpose. It gives you purpose, a renewed purpose every time you go there, right? You rejuvenate yourself with positive energies, because the negotiations can be draining. We go from 8 a.m. to 2 a.m., come back 8 a.m., 8 a.m. to 5 a.m., come back 8 a.m. It's not a joke. Like it's tiresome. So when you get breaks in between, and you know that there's a side event that's happening by, say, for example, Diva, or by Pacific Island students fighting climate change, or by 350 Pacific, or by Pacific Climate Warriors, you go, you show up to these spaces, not only in solidarity, but to learn, to ground yourself, right? I'm here for a reason. These people are doing this work so genuinely, so passionately. How can I take these voices in the room, right? How can I make sure that I have the same drive that they are showing outside here, the positive call for action, the demands that they are making? How can I ensure that those demands are shared in the room, right? How can I make sure that I don't let them down? I don't let myself down, and I don't let them down. So I think it's very important. So and you can't participate at a protest because they all know we are wearing a badge that kind of limits you. But how can you still ensure that the group that is coming there are going to these events, to these demonstrations, to call out rightfully those that are not doing just to us, that are not making just full transitions that they're supposed to do.
Wow. Yes, man, we Dr. Sivendra for highlighting those things that happen behind the scene. Many of us don't see it. We only see the front end. But for you, sharing those things that happen, in behind closed doors, we really appreciate it, Dr.
Yeah.
Sivendra.
And I think my team also knows that I'm a very emotional and sensitive person. So there will be those wellness check and those checks that the Pacific CSO did. So last year, like I remember we were negotiating, we were headlocked on loss and damage fund till like 3 a.m. And the decision was still not being made. Amount of tears shed inside the room, amount of arguments held in the room, beyond explanation. Words are not enough to actually tell people what's happening in that room, because I get goosebumps right now, as you can see, even talking about it. Like it's draining. It's like an emotional roller coaster. So when I came outside, the Pacific CSOs, they bought dinner for us. They were there, like making sure that we are well fed and we are well hydrated, so that we can go back in the room and do our best. No other delegation had like CSOs coming to help them to do that. Our CSOs, they come up into these spaces, they know what their negotiators are going through. They have a sense of what's happening in those rooms, because we are talking to them outside the spaces as well. We are taking those stories inside. We are doing sense check. We are doing reality checks all the time. So they take care of us as well. I had like a person, her name is Luna. She like cut cucumbers and apples and had juice and fruit juice. And all I had to do was say, I'm in room number 15. The informal discussions are going to be prolonged by 2 hours. I haven't eaten. Bam, the food is there. Outside the room, I just come quickly, eat, go back in the room. Gabriel from Climate Change Division now, sometimes he comes and asks me like questions like, are you okay, bro? Is everything okay? And he's seen me, like I just sit down in one corner and start like crying, because I do not know how to control those emotions, like, because I can't seem to understand why are we like headlocked on small things that we can go past so easily. And calling them out is not doing enough, because even if I tell them like, come on US, come on UK, like you guys can come to a agreement, because all the other countries have agreed to it. Why can't you guys make up your minds and be on board? Like, it's just, why do you have to make our life so difficult? And everybody else is like for the idea, and then EU comes and says, and like, we don't want this as well. And it just it's just like sometimes you just want to just those high school teachers that I had. Yeah, but it's the reality.
Yes,
We've been through it. We grow, like I say, we grow in this space. I hope I've grown from last year, and I pray and I fast. It's Lent season. I'm fasting as well. So I hope that I will continue to grow this year in this space as well. It's a difficult and I wouldn't say difficult. I'll take that back. It's a space that requires you to be genuinely committed. It's a space that requires you to stand up to challenges and identify resources that's going to help you navigate, you know.
This one of your fans from Dubai, Safira Ogden Malo Lebu, Dr. Safira, for listening in. And this is what Safira said, Dr. Michael. Thank you, Dr. Michael, and others working together in highlighting the negative impacts of climate change within the Pacific Islands. Thank you for carrying the voices and concerns of our people to the international. So
Hello, thank you
that's
so much. And tell
yeah.
Savara this year it's in Dubai, so you better show up and like be there. I hope you are listening. Identify opportunities. I mean, it's in a place where you reside in. You are more than welcome to come in as an observer, observe the spaces, contribute in whatever way you can. So all the Fijians that are living in the Middle East, if you have time, late November, December, please support your whānau that is going to come up for this year's COP. Yeah.
So, for I think unpacking those information about the COP meetings, because many of us, I think for me personally, I got to know a little bit about it when it was COP 23, because Fiji was hosting, yeah, and then after that it went to different places, and then Egypt last year. So who's
Yeah.
going to host in the next one?
Dubai, United Arab
Dubai.
Emirates. Yeah.
Okay. So Safaira, Dr. Michael will be there, so you better show up and show support. Yeah.
And reach out if you are, trying to find badges, right, to get into the place. So please email. There's many organizations that can take you on board as part of our Pacific Islands representation. Yeah.
Sabi na makalimu, Dr. Michael for highlighting those concerns. And at least, I think my last question is, what would you suggest in terms of spaces that we can utilize ourselves within Oceania, within the Pacific, to have our Talanoa and being open and honest and being genuine about it? What are some of your ideas?
Okay. So personally, I guess when you talk about spaces, it starts from your home. Your vuvale, is it the right word I'm using here? Your vuvale, right? It starts from your vuvale. So you ensure that you are having these conversations within your family. Yeah. I mean, the most approachable people are your parents, your elders, right? They may not know the terminology climate change, but they are beacons of knowledge. They are beacons of hope in this space. They are the ones that have lived the longest, and they are going to be our ancestors in the near future. So I knew that, my dad was someone that unfortunately he never went, he never had the opportunity to finish after class 7. He only went to class 7, but he's someone that is a strong believer in ensuring that his children are educated. So he made sure we were belted, we were done everything to get to school and see ourselves through a degree, right? And I could have these conversations with him quite easily, and he's always eager to learn my perspective, but he's always also there to offer his perspectives from a person that has lived it, from a person that walks the street, right? One of these person in Tonga always told me, it's the street talk that matters, you know. the street talk, because on the streets, you know what's the conversations, and we are working in our office. We are so connected to the research world, right? We are reading things every day. So that kind of verification, validation, and a new renowned perspective comes from this interactions that you have with your grandparents, your parents. So start, I think one encouragement is to start conversations with within the house. It's okay to have debates. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to not believe that climate change is real. It's your belief, right? But also, it's not okay to just stand staunch on that knowledge. It's your ability to open up your ways of thinking to allow conversations to flow in, right? So, for example, if Dr. T, you are not so comfortable to talk about climate change, but you are willing to hear my story and my perspectives and give your perspective, it's the basic thing we can do to start having a debate and conversation. There will be, I said it on the first time, and I will say it again and again, there will be climate deniers. There will be people that will deny that climate change exists. You cannot do anything to change them. If they're not open to having these conversations, you've tried, you've done your part. You've had a conversation with them. You've tried to ask them questions. And if they're not welcoming or not opportunistic to have a conversation, you have to redivert that energy somewhere else. So then it goes outside the Vuvale. You go to your, your village leaders, your Turangani Yabusa, Turangani Koro, have those conversations with them. It's quite rightfully sitting when you are talking about, how do I say this? Like, it's only rightfully sitting that we are not knowledgeable about all things. There's always room to understand a different perspective. So during my research in Vatua, I went and talked to the people of Nawangarua. Then I came to, the people of Vatua. Then I went to the people of, the other village nearby. And so, yeah, from Itatoko. So, I understood, like, there's different cultures, different background, different perspectives. You can't represent all those stories. So what are things you can draw on, the similarities of the asks, the demands, and then how can you then feed that into other spaces? That's very important. When you're going into from the community level to the, places, because remember, when the community has this discussion, when the development partners come to the community, your village leaders will only bring this issue to light if you have had the conversation with them. Otherwise, they would be like, okay, maybe I'm only thinking like this. My people are not thinking like this, right? Maybe it's only an issue that I'm concerned about because he's not had a conversation with the rest of the people. Like, we're not having a robust Talanoa. And to be quite frank, the best conversations I've had about these things in spaces is during a kava session. No one can beat that. With the kava going and your knees getting numb and your tongue and your body like relaxing, those thoughts really open up. And you can be quite controversial, like quite attacking as well sometimes, but then you get a space to have a very genuine conversation, because Talanoa with a kava is so different than Talanoa that we are doing, right, Dr. T? By now, us two would have had how many bilos, and probably probably more naturally flowing than yeah. Yeah, so start at home. If you don't have access to people within your Vuvale, extend it to your Matangali, extend it to your Vanua. From the Vanua, throw yourself out there. There's all these consultations that are happening. A good example I'll give you. You remember Reverend James Bhagwan? He talked about the mangrove, the reclamation of the mangroves. Like, they're gonna destroy all of that to do an investment, right? Environmental impact assessment consultation is open to the general public. It's not only open to a member of your village. It's open to everyone. show up to that space. Ask the questions that you need to ask. You're concerned about the earth, you're concerned about Mother Nature, make an initiative, step out of the box, go to these places, show yourself. If it's too much to go there, engage with your friends that are there so that they can take your stories there, right? I always say, this person from Vatua has asked me, because I reach out to them, has asked me this question. Read the person's name. This is the question. They demand the answer. Although I can answer it to them, I will not do that. I will ask the people that are supposed to be held accountable to answer to my friend because she has asked or he has asked, right? So I think it's a responsibility that we need to really acknowledge. Yeah.
Nakabakalisar Dr. Sivendra nanao mo may bitalno tubot kikima minikuha. So it's really amazing and a breath of fresh air when you come on board to share some of the concerns that you are experiencing, but also looking at solutions. So I think that's the main aim of this program is to discuss those difficult circumstances, but actually look for solutions. And you've shared some of that tonight. I know you'll be packing and preparing your next leg of the journey to Malawi. So maybe to bring our Talanoa to a conclusion, any last advice or comment you'd like to share, particularly with our young people and parents who have youths who are maybe starting university and maybe thinking of following your footsteps in the field of climate change and resilience and development studies?
Yeah, I think to my young people out there, first of all, before I go to my young people, I'm so sorry if my voice is a bit elevated. I am deeply sorry if it's sometimes I'm a bit loud. I guess it's the mana you carry, and like it's you knowing, like I said in my first meeting, that you are knowing and acknowledging that people are in a far worse situation than you are. That's how I came into this space, colleagues. My great mentor, Mr. Fenton Lutunatambua, he always said, you empathize with others, you empathize with your own stories, but more importantly, you acknowledge that there are people that are in far worse situation, and that should give you the strength to do the work that you're doing. So to my young people that are out there that are listening into me and Dr. T's conversation, create opportunities for yourself. Don't sit and wait around for the opportunities to come to you. Remember, in my first conversation, I told you that there are various forms of activism. It does not mean that you need to take a hailer and go to the streets and share those stories. It's about engaging with your people in your vanua. It's about writing about them. It's about blogging about them. It's about ensuring that when you are uncomfortable in the space that someone's talking about your people and policies that concern your people, that you question them. You question them diplomatically, you question them unapologetically, right? That you are there as a custodian of knowledge, as a knowledge holder, and you are grounded with the realities of lived experiences that you need to make others aware and orientate them. To parents, let your children grow those wings and let them fly. Motivate them, encourage them to look beyond the horizon. Having a bachelor's degree in accounting and economics is no longer the solution to this world's problem. I say this as a former alumni of USP, a former graduate with multiple degrees. But finding your space and your passion in the work you do or the work you choose to do should be described by the person themselves. So let them explore this world. Remember that no child is perfect. Your grades don't matter. If a person genuinely loves what they are doing, if your child genuinely is enjoying a space and is learning from that space and learning the process of engaging in that space, that is more meaningful than a piece of paper, which is a degree. There are other forms that you need to also acknowledge, parents and grandparents and our elders, that not everybody is academically gifted, but there are children that are creatively gifted. Utilize those creative skills, let them engage in these spaces through their creative ways. Poetry, through activism, through activism is a new thing. It's been in the region. Uh, there's organizations like Utonialo that actually give you other craftsman skills to be joining vessels to sail. That gives them a satisfaction in life to do what they are doing. So if you're hearing me as a parent, and as a youth adjacent, right? I was in that shoe 10, 20 years, 10, 15 years ago, as a young person. I've grown out of that space. Now I'm a parent. So with my Sophia, who is 9 years old, I always push her that you can do well in school, but you can also think outside the box. There's many other avenues that you can engage your creative thinking, right? You can come with daddy to a march, but you don't have to hold the flag if you are not comfortable to. You don't have to hold a signboard if you're not comfortable to. How do you want to engage? Do you want to dance? You just want to watch, but giving them those wings is so important, like supporting them, is what I say. So support them meaningfully and support them knowing that they are also having their own desires. Sandua tale nango and nangona kitoe we grew up in is very different to what our children are growing up in. It's technologies are it's taken over, so we need to recognize that. And yeah, to any of the viewers that wants to engage meaningfully and holistically in this space, reach out. We are human beings. Whatever they say, you are busy, you are never too busy to make time for others. So even a message, tag us on the comment, tag Dr. T, tag me. She'll always ask me the question. I can always share the links. You want to join groups, NGO groups, activist group, uh, send your email. I can send it to Mr. Lavetelangi Seru, who is the coordinator for the Pacific Island Climate Action Network. It will give you a plethora of information, or a whole body of information that you can choose where you want to engage. So don't stop yourself from those interactions. Create those interactions for yourself. Yeah. And this is one space Dr. T and I have created for you. So engage with us. Engage with us through the video. And I'm just so blessed to be here and so grateful. And God willing, may we continue to do our part as royal citizens, as custodians of knowledge, and as people with lived experiences of the Pacific. Malo apito and vinabalew.
Totoo. Wow, mundo. Nakapakilibsar, Dr. Sivendra Michael, for joining us from Bangkok in Thailand. It's, I'm sure, after 4 now,
Yeah.
over there, nearly 5 o'clock. And we are just so grateful that in the next few hours, you'll be going back to the airport to wait for your flight for Malawi. But again, from all of us, we just want to say Nakamakalemu for coming in and share your concerns and your experiences very openly. And I think that's what academic studies is all about, for us to critique the things that we do. And change is good. Change is really important, that we can have some of our community voices and indigenous voices taken seriously and be recorded for for future reference as well for us.
Yeah. And remember that change starts from ourselves as individual. So if you want to become better citizens, we need to be responsible citizens. And with being a great citizen and wanting to see the change in yourself, you take the necessary actions that you want to see. You don't just, like they say, you don't only remember God in your bad days, you remember God in your good and bad days, right? You don't only go in your knees and pray to Lord Jesus that, to grant us sympathy or ask him for forgiveness when we have done wrong. We have actually asking him for forgiveness every day. So if it's the change you want to see, from picking a rubbish on the road to helping a poor person to feeding the hunger, it's the change you want to see that you need to create for the society. So remember, the change starts from yourself. And please pray for each other. I mean, this world is a place that requires these prayers. It's a time and age where we need to be genuine towards each other. To be better humans, we need to demonstrate amongst us the change that we want to see. And with these words, I'm going to say bye. Kapun ka from Thailand. I learned little bit and malo apito vinavalevu.
So and we look forward to having you join us from Malawi next Monday.
Yes.
Bon voyage, Dr. Sivendra, and
Thank you.
we look forward to hear from you when you reach the African continent. Madamanda.
Mother.
Sa nakavalim sa Dr. Sivendra Michael, siya sa Chukome, Thailand, on his way to Malawi, and we wish him all the very best for his trip over there. He will be there for a month. And he's here on Mondays to encourage our young people and also the older ones in these sessions, so that we can be able to value our voices in the Pacific, or maybe we can say our indigenous voices matter. So nakapakalimu Dr. Sivendra for sharing your journey with us, some of the challenges you go through. We really, really appreciate all the stories that you shared with us, including your COP meetings, the one you attended in Germany and the ones before that. We really, really want to say nakapakalimu and bon voyage to Malawi. We kami na barong ti kumay, nakapaliw sar na siya mamay, and bong vinakadikwa, sa may tapan na Nero Talanoa, kay Dr. Sivendra Michael, vinakapaliw sa Fire Ogden, Willie Sibimbataki, Marie Vangata, Christopher Veu, Viniana Waininau, nakapaliw, nasema chukma Linda Lockington, Nimbula Vinaka, Elena Boyle, Luke na Isila, kay area tarakrako nakabalik sar na naman ni fakumurito ko na Nairobi Talanoa sa fakumatin ko vikim ni di mo